Hey Ashwin, how are you doing?
Hello, is this working all right?
Yeah, yeah, working.
Awesome.
So, hey everyone, thanks for joining in today's Twitter space. So, today it's all about cloud native SIGs, open source, and hackathons. We will explore these cool topics, and we have got a special guest who's been there, done that. And our guest today is Ashwin, who has been in your shoes starting from scratch and has now made a name for themselves in the cloud native community. So, whether you are just getting started with cloud native tech or thinking about joining a hackathon or even dipping your toes into open source, you are in for a treat. It doesn't matter if you are just starting out or already on your way, we have got something for everyone. We are here to make it all easy to understand and get you pumped to take your next steps to level up your skills. So just get ready for a chat that's fun, informative, and most importantly, relatable. Let's start it and learn together with Ashwin. So, Ashwin, would you like to give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. That was such a kind introduction, Akansha. Hi everyone. My name is Ashwin Kumar Uppala. Lots of familiar faces in the chat here. Right now, I work as an associate program manager at GitHub, but I have been in the cloud native ecosystem for almost a year and a half or two now. Uh, And apart from that, I love contributing to open source, getting involved in communities. I know a lot of folks here in the audience have done awesome work for the community, and I really get inspired by that. Uh, my journey has been quite interesting in cloud native, so I'm happy to talk more about it. But yeah, that is all the introduction about me.
So, as you said that you want to talk a little about your journey, so how did you first get started with cloud native technologies? Like, what motivated you to start off with, like, including your interest in this field?
I would say instead of a technology, it's the people that kind of motivate me to stay here. When you're in college, I was exploring all these different communities. Oh, there's something called open source, and then there is something called Web3 was coming at the same time, and then there's something called Cloud Native was coming, and so many stuff. And I was trying to poke around each one of the communities and feel like what can I learn from them. And while I bumped into something called KubeCon or these kind of conferences which talk about these things, and there's like so much information. I cannot filter out. It is just too much, right? Uh, what I did like is I have no idea or knowledge about any of the cloud native technologies, and these people are still so welcoming. Like these are like super influential, awesome folks who have made a huge change in the community. Like they have built around all of these tools that we are using right now, and they're being so nice to me. Like I used to be, I think myself as a nobody, and I feel like I'm being respected here. And you know what? Let's stick around and see what happens. And that's how I got started with the so-called SIG or special interest group, which is also there in the title. Uh, these are sort of this interest-based, topic-based, self-run communities or groups that are run in Cloud Native, but you'll find them outside Cloud Native too. But in my experience, the Cloud Native ecosystem is super welcoming and inclusive, which made me feel like staying and exploring a little bit more.
I relate with you so much because when I attended KubeCon, the people out there are so welcoming, and that was also my starting point of exploring cloud native domain. So yeah, this ecosystem is like 100% very welcoming, and they don't judge you for from what background you come in. So yeah, so that's a really good reason for getting involved in this ecosystem for the people rather than the tech. So talking about the people, there are some SIGs, right, which are different kinds of people. How are SIGs organized and structured within the cloud native ecosystem? How can someone join or get involved with a Kubernetes SIG?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Let's first break it down to two parts. What is Kubernetes and what is SIG? Now, again, Kubernetes, we can have an entire separate conversation on that. If you are new, if you are hearing this term for the first time, maybe you joined because you saw the word hackathon and you're like, this guy's talking about Kubernetes. What is that? Is that a cuisine? Is that what is that? Is that a movie? Uh, I can talk about that, but for now, it's a popular DevOps tool that a lot of enterprises use. It container orchestration, yes, but let's not get too detailed about that. Now, there is this tool. It is huge, and to maintain this tool, which is maintained for free, so Kubernetes is open source, so it is maintained self-run by people who are interested and like not get paid for it. Now, to run this, it's not, you cannot have a straight up meetings with teams, or especially someone with like a global use case. So to form a very structured community to maintain this awesome tool, to make sure that you know maybe Ashwin is maintaining Kubernetes, and if I'm busy tomorrow, if I get sick, or maybe I just want to try something else, what should I do as a maintainer to make sure that this project is being maintained or being passed down to new leaders in the future? To create that self-sustainable community, SIGs are formed, called special interest groups. Kubernetes is again accumulation of lots of small projects. Um, so if you go to Kubernetes, or should I say K8s.dev, that is spelled K for Kolkata, the number 8, s.dev. You will just go to the main website to everything that I'll be talking about right now. So in k8s.dev, you have this option to find all the communities that are there in Kubernetes, and then there are different special interest groups depending on what part of this community you want to contribute. Not every contribution has to be via code. We have a docs, we have CLI, we have security, we have observability. So all of these special interest groups are divided and maintained by a technical advisory board. So each group has a lead, which leads the conversation, takes regular calls. All of these calls are transparent and open for everyone, so there's no barrier of entry to enter these groups. One of the most common questions I've been asked is, Ashwin, I don't know Kubernetes, or Ashwin, I feel like these are like all like highly achieved few people. So there's no barrier of entry to enter these groups, or you don't need to know a certain cloud native technology to enter these meetings or groups. In fact, that is the purpose of these special interest groups, to so that you could learn from that transparent conversations that maintainers are having while they're maintaining the Kubernetes project or any CNCF project which is out there, open source for that matter. uh, Again, speaking of k8s.dev, if you go to k8s.dev, let me go ahead and
I
put
will
that.
put it in the
Oh,
comment
thank
and
you so
pin it.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go there and if you hit the community button, you will see there are so many communities. Like if I open that right now in my another tab, I can see there's docs, there's network, there is scalability, security, storage, UI. We got we got contributor experience, which is especially meant to like improve the experience of contributors spending their time contributing to Kubernetes. And each of these special interest groups has a chair, a lead, a couple of chairs who make sure these groups are having recurring meetings, or if you miss it, there are like notes. And my favorite is that there is a community calendar for all of these groups. Uh, what it is like, it's simply you can see. In fact, as of speaking right now, there are meetings happening by one of these groups. So right now it's 7:30 p.m. in India, and there is SIG auto scaling meeting happening as we speak. So there's tons of SIGs to choose from and tons of conversations to try out. Um, my recommendation would be just pick any one of them and try to dig deeper. And if that does not work, then try another one. Um, So this community calendar has everything that you can subscribe to and see on your own Google Calendar, see what's the next meeting coming up. And honestly, you don't have to come up with the agenda to join these conversations. Just the most learning phase when you're trying to learn about a technology happens when you're observing conversations, in my own experience. So yeah, that I think that kind of sums up what is a special interest group, how you can join them, and how you can get involved. Now I'm talking in specifically for CNCF, but special interest groups are common outside the CNCF too. They may be rebranded with another name called communities or something else. Nowadays, I also hear the word TAG, which is Technical Advisory Group. So yeah, you may find rebranding of them, but special interest groups are your best bet to learn about a new technology when you're starting out and you need that community support and conversations.
So, yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And yeah, those are some great points for getting involved with SIGs. And before I move on to the next question, I want to remind the audience that if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comment and we will take it up later on. And yeah, so coming to the questions, like let's help the beginners now. So for someone new to cloud native and they are interested in open source, what advice would you give to get started and make meaningful contributions? And how do you choose right projects to contribute to and make good use of the relevant SIGs?
I think I want to address a problem here via this question. I do get this asked a lot, and the common pattern I see is if you are new, you kind of get stuck in the tutorial loop, or you consider yourself as a beginner forever. That's one of the biggest problems I've seen in the CNCS space. I understand that technology can be overwhelming, especially if you don't have an engineering background or a networking background. But the moment you join a SIG meeting or help out with the notes or ask a good question, you are not a beginner to CNCF anymore. You need to stop considering yourself as a beginner in CNCF. Because if you do that, you won't be able to push yourself and get out of that comfort zone. I think being in that comfort zone of considering yourself beginner is great, but the next big problem that I've seen, and I love that CNCF making a lot of effort to push and encourage students or career transitionist or someone who is new to this technology. The problem I'm seeing is there is no growth once someone enters this space. Now, again, it's your choice. You maybe it's not for you, maybe it does not work out the CNCF technologies, but you don't give up before trying out. So so you have joined a CNCF, you joined this Twitter space, all right? You joined this and you found out about the website and you subscribe to a couple of calendar, you join the Slack. What's next? You attend those meetings. You attend them. Okay, you're not getting anything. You're not understanding everything. Maybe you ask out, hey, I don't understand anything. What do I do? And the chair, the leadership, they point you toward the resources to catch up with everything that you got. You got that, you keep attending those meetings and you find out there's a place you can help. Even though if there's something you're not familiar with, feel free to like mention that hey, I'm not familiar with this, but I would love to help. The Oh, was I audible?
I
Yeah.
lost you for like,
Okay, I'm back. I'm
I
back.
thought
I
you.
got a
Yep.
call for a second. Sorry. So the purpose of these special interest groups is to allow that room for mistake so that you could grow. It's going to be very, very, very difficult for you to grow in any technology or community if you don't try to push yourself and try out contributing to new projects that you are not familiar of. Especially if you are new to this community and you have nothing at stake. You're not losing a job. You're not losing out on anything if you make that mistake. So just go out, uh, yes, try all these basic stuff, read the blogs and join the meetings. But once you've joined a meeting or two, just try to like ask questions. There's no dumb question. All questions are like valuable. You're just adding extra uh perspective to those meetings. It's a very similar advice like to when you're contributing to open source. But the only difference here is since we are talking about a very specific set of technologies, try to push yourself and get used to being uncomfortable uh, when you're trying to explore those technologies. And by uncomfortable, I mean you don't know Kubernetes, or maybe you don't know Kyverno or Helm, never heard of this, and ask that question. I don't know this. How do I do that? That makes you uncomfortable. There's a bit of because you're stepping out of that comfort zone, but it is necessary if you plan to grow or learn more from this community.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. The transparency that you put in the answer, I really loved it, and I'm sure the audience will gain insightful answers from it. So, you mentioned a little about hackathons earlier, so let's talk about that for a bit. I know you have won a couple of global hackathons, which is an impressive feat. I know that you and your team built LearnScape, and that was a platform that was developed that it can guide new folks and to learn concepts for Docker and Kubernetes. So, what was the learning curve and experience during the building process?
Oh boy, I should really maintain that project now. So, uh, we made that project as part of Cloud Native Hackathon. I guess it was one of the first cloud native hackathons almost 2 years ago. It was 2022 January, and cloud native hackathon, kind of says in the name, you are solving problems in cloud native. The prizes, like the tools that you could use, lots of partners from cloud native technologies you could use, and that was my first time actually trying to implement those technologies. I've been with the community, I've attended those meetings, but I wasn't feeling any growth. Like, okay, this is so far that I could understand from under learning those, listening to those conversations. I gotta try that out. And sometimes it can be hard to do it alone, and it's fun to do it with friends. So I was able to drag three of my other great good friends in hackathons to participate in this. Uh, cool prizes, and that's the hook I use. Like, hey, we are gonna win prizes, and it's pretty cool hackathon. It's the first concept. Let's try it out. Uh, the project itself was meant to help you get started with cloud native if you have no idea about the landscape, because that was the exact problem we were facing back then. Like, I don't know where do I fit in, so let's literally just build a project that solves it. How do we do it? Back then we had no idea. We are trying to come up with our own framework, asking a bunch of questions, making sure like uh, bridging that gap of like, hey, how do I get started and to the correct answer where you fit in. But we were trying to solve a problem that we faced back then. It was very personalized problem, and it was fun because we realized we are not the only ones solving facing that problems. Now, one thing we made sure to do was uh, use a lot of tools from CNCF because they were also part of the sponsor. And for motivation, we said like, hey, the more tools we use, the more chances of winning those prizes. There are a lot of sponsor prizes for using those tools. If you use Datry, you win this voucher. If you use GitHub, you win that. And you use that motivation that, hey, we're gonna win some prizes. Let's use that as a motivation. But the important part was we trying to use those cloud native projects and understanding how these works or fit in with our projects. Uh, so we used that and we implemented, I guess, almost 4 to 5 different uh, cloud native projects in a single in a hackathon submission. Uh, in fact, one of our members, um who was contributing to, I guess, not a cloud native project, but we are also implementing that. We ended up also contributing to one of them. I ended up contributing to Caverno later on. So in a sense, that hackathon phase when you are like coding in a group under a lot of pressure, you kind of get the experience of using these tools and find out what are the problems we are having. So we are like, oh, you know what? I want to use data in my project. It's difficult to implement it, and we only have 4 hours left. What do I do? I go out to the hackathon, this like virtual booth, and I ask them, hey, we are having some problem implementing this. What do you think? Now these conversations are what where the like you get the actual gist of using those projects and figure out whether this project or this tool is something you wanna invest your time in. So yeah, that was a pretty fun hackathon, and it is still one of my favorite projects that I love to talk about because there's a huge. I think it was one of the best learning curves for me, technically. Via that hackathon, I love personally love hackathons. I love coding in short sprints and in a competitive environment. You may have a different learning curve, and feel free to approach that. But hackathons are great, a great way to learn these technologies because there's always a reward associated with it. You sometimes it can be difficult. If I ask you after this Twitter space to like go ahead, try Kubernetes and a couple of clusters, what's the reward, Ashwin? Am I getting a T-shirt? Am I getting stickers here? So yeah, it's difficult to do it without any reward system. So see if you can find those opportunities. Typically, you find them like at conferences. Being part of conferences is a great way, or joining hackathons around the topic can also help you try out those technologies much more efficiently than doing it out of sheer motivation and will.
Thanks, Ashwin, for that. So, following up on that, like, what are the best practices that you would recommend for participating in a hackathon? Like, how you get started, how you find teams, etc.
Huh. Okay. Hmm. This will be more, I would say this is more like a standard advice that I won't make it very specific to cloud native, but it's a choice. It depends. Sometimes I hackathon alone when I feel like I want to take a break and do it like, it's much more comfortable for me to step in and out of that hackathon. But most of the time, I prefer to have teammates. It kind of keeps me accountable. It's fun, and I get to network with these folks. Uh, it's important who you are teaming up with. Can be your friend, can be your community friend or a colleague. But it is also important that see if you can have someone new. That's how I made friends. Like just reach out to folks who were interested. Um, at the same time, like kind of like figure out what are you trying to get out of that hackathon. Like, are all of you on the same page? Like, I want to learn. Maybe I want to learn a new technology out of this hackathon, but my teammate wants to win that single prize that is listed in the page, and someone else is like maybe like they just were there for fun. So you want to make sure you all are on the same page or have that agreed. Otherwise, sometimes what happens is, or at least most often that happens, I see in hackathons when I staff them as MLH coach, is teammates end up like some teammates end up ghosting or not responding, especially if it's a virtual hackathon or joining multiple teams. So I think my strong advice is when you are building a team in a hackathon, uh, you may end up in more than one team sometimes, especially if it's like a global hackathon and you are open to networking. So it's your responsibility to pick one team and let the others know that you won't be participating so they can look for some other team member and not wait for you to like respond or assume that you are still part of their team.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwin, for that. Like, this was quite insightful. So like I will divert the topic a little bit, and I want to talk about a little about imposter syndrome. Everyone goes through it, and I've gone through it more than a few times. So, would you be comfortable sharing your experience with imposter syndrome, particularly as it relates to your involvement in SIGs, hackathons, and open source project? How did you personally handle it? And do you have any advice for newcomers who may be struggling with it?
Oh yeah, totally. Uh, if you are new here, if you're listening me to the first time, uh, you might be thinking like I know about this stuff, but it took me two KubeCons, 2 to 3 KubeCons almost. That means like two good efficient years to even understand what happens in the community and give a one-line answer to that. I just commented a really good talk by Kunal, who also talked about using imposter syndrome to your advantage. Check it out after the space. But uh, imposter syndrome is natural. It happens every time you try to make a transition or join a new community that you're not part of. And then you see people who are doing so well and you're not understanding anything at all. Uh, what you don't see is if you don't know about the technology in that room, you are the person who has the most to absorb from that room. You see, if I'm an expert or if I know about Kubernetes and if I walk into this Twitter space right now, all right, I know about this technology and I may not learn as much if you are totally new to this CNCF contributor space. And if you are just like give me a reaction, if you're new to this space, you are learning the most from this conversation. And that is super cool. So a lot of people who like imposter syndrome is common. Even if you understand everything about this technology, there'll be a next layer of imposter syndrome of now there'll be a peer pressure of contributing to it and not being able to. And then if you do that, there'll be another stage of maintaining it and not being able to. So it's natural. It comes with the phases of when you're trying to like transition or try out uh, new technologies or maybe growing in that specific field. What is important is how you can be aware that imposter syndrome is kicking in. That awareness is more important. Typically, people don't worry about the awareness and look for solutions to prevent it or to mitigate it. But it's important to realize, in my opinion, that you need to understand when imposter syndrome is kicking in certain stage of your journey. And once you are aware of it, just that, you just need to be aware of it, you will be able to manage your journey much more efficiently, knowing that there's imposter syndrome because there now you can talk about it, you can relate to it to other folks who talk about it, you can uh, reprioritize if the career path or the trajectory you are on is right for you or not. So being aware of imposter syndromes kicking in is more important, and there are like common symptoms or these things that you can Google up, but feeling low self esteem. Oh, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
totally.
okay, it's a weird. Yeah, and it's a classic Twitter bug. So, uh, yeah, there are a couple of standard symptoms when you see imposter syndrome kicking in, like not finding yourself productive every day, or your self-esteem is low, or you feel like you're unconsciously comparing your own progress with others all the time. These are like common symptoms of feeling that imposter syndrome. Um, there are advantages to it. Like I said, you get to learn the most. Uh, Another thing is the opposite of imposter syndrome. There is a word. Let me. So, imposter syndrome is basically feeling demotivated or lack of confidence, right? That's the way to sum it up. The opposite of it is called Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, if imposter syndrome is making you feel less confident, what happens if you're on the other side? You feel overconfident, and it's better to feel like it can be much more difficult to be aware of overconfidence. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you're still far off better finding it out and diagnosing it and using it to your advantage.
That is some really good advice, Ashwin. Thanks for sharing that. And I also believe that, yeah, it's important that we acknowledge that we have a syndrome. And if we acknowledge the fact, then we should celebrate the wins and have a positive mindset to it. So I'm sure folks would benefit from your advice about dealing with imposter syndrome. And yeah, do check out Kunal's talk about it. It is pinned in this space. I also see that Siddhant has requested for Mike. So, Siddhant, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Ashwin.
Hey, yeah. Hi, Ashwin. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? It's going all right here.
Yep, same here. I just wanted to ask about your first SIG call experience. So, if I talk about my very first SIG call experience, it was the Contribix SIG. So that day I had just worked on a little bit of their Twitter bug. So for folks who don't know, CNCF's Twitter handle has this really nice system where you just make a GitHub PR, and if it gets approved, that the content of that PR automatically gets posted onto CNCF Twitter. So it had some bug recently, so I was working with a friend to fix it, and that was my first call. Obviously, I didn't have much to contribute to the call itself. The person who I was working with did it more, talk more about all the technicalities. But yeah, I'm curious to hear about your first SIG call experience and in which SIG it was.
Oh boy, I think it was SIG release. So release team is the the special interest group which manages release of Kubernetes version. They got a couple of shadow programs, but this meeting is where they discuss the life cycle and the next release of Kubernetes. And I have no idea what's going on. Like no idea. Like I started creating notes, and every third word would be a term I've never heard about. It was so many new terms. What is happening? And it felt like if you're in a hackathon, you suddenly join this team in the middle of the project and you have no context at all. Yes, I felt like that. Like I have no idea, but instead of thinking that I have no idea and it's going to be impossible to learn, I took it more like, oh, there's a lot that I could learn from here and it's going to be pretty fun. So, one thing that I kind of like built this pattern or habit is checking out the meeting notes. They have really well written, elaborate meeting notes. So if they talk about something that has been mentioned in the previous meetings, every meeting has a Google Doc to it, and I jump to the summaries of what was discussed or what is being discussed. And sometimes I actually ask this question that I don't understand what's happening here. Can you bring me to context? And it actually works out. They just point me to the Slack channels that they are discussing something in specific or what is being talked about, and it is pretty much it makes it much more easy for me to understand. But yes, I'm no expert. When I joined my first SIG meeting, it was like I had no idea what's happening around. So what I would do is treat these meetings like a podcast, like you let them run in the background while I'm trying to learn more about Kubernetes or understand some stuff. All of these meetings are again recorded, and everything is like the meeting notes and everything is recorded for anyone to access it later. But my first experience was very overwhelming. It took me some time to get in pace with what is being talked about here.
Awesome. That's really nice to hear. A little. recent experience of mine as well. So recently I completed the CKA exam, and after that I wanted to get involved with the networking SIG. I joined their first meeting and I had the exact same experience about I can't understand a single word that these folks are talking about. I had to Google every single term. So yeah, trying to get more involved in that as well now.
That's really great, Siddhant and Ashwin. I had a follow up question to what you replied before, but before moving on to that, I see like Pratyush has requested for Mike. So yeah, I will go ahead with his question first. Pratyush, you could feel free to ask the question.
Yeah, I have also like the first of all, hi Yasin. Nice to meet you after a long time. But yeah, I have the following follow-up question like someone who is actually joining the SIG meetings and actually there are so many new terms we heard and also like I want to know how to learn along with attending the meetings simultaneously, all the things. Yeah.
Well, if you're joining for the first time, there's a lot of learning happening in those meetings. So try to focus there. What I would do is there's a lot of reference and context provided in CNCF meetings. So while the meeting is happening, I will also open those docs and the related GitHub issues to understand a couple of context. But yes, I like it can be difficult to multitask there. I would recommend focusing on that meeting entirely for the first few calls before you try to uh, jump into other places. But also, like sometimes I would if a meeting is not happening, I would try to read all the responsibility of those team members. It's mentioned in the GitHub organization of Kubernetes, where they tell about what each person does, so I get more idea of what they're talking about. So getting all that context really helped me. There's a lot of reading involved, and it takes some time. In fact, sometimes I have to read stuff twice to understand, and which is okay, but it's worth the effort. So it takes some time, and each one of us have their own pace of understanding. Plus, these are all like open source, so I expect you to do it in your free time and not part of your full time job. So it can take some time. So you can always take it slow and easy.
Thanks, Ashwin. I hope Pratyush, it answers your question. So yeah, coming back to the follow up that I had, are there any specific SIGs, hackathons, or open source programs that you would recommend the audience, and why do they stand out as good entry points?
Hmm. Okay. Again, I wanna focus here on entry point first. What it depends. What do you define entry point for you? It's different for each person. I would not. I would recommend trying. Yeah, I'm not sure if there are a lot of cloud native hackathons, but if there are, DevPost is the place to check it out. The search for cloud native, and you will find any active cloud native hackathons. Actually, let me see if we got a couple of cloud hackathons here, uh, but very few. You can totally try those out. Now, speaking of entry points, SIG meetings are good. Getting involved with conversations are good. If you are a visual learner, go for meetings.
I think I lost you for a bit, like when you were talking about visual learner.
Try now. Can you hear me? Awesome. I got a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
yeah, you were talking about visual learner.
So if you're a visual learner,
Yeah.
yeah, go for meetings because you learn better that way. Or Slack, all the Slack messages or threads, or get engaged there. If you're an auditory learner, keep those meetings. There are a couple of podcasts, awesome podcasts too. There's the Kubernetes project, I guess. It's an awesome podcast. It's run by Google. Really awesome conversations there. Not all technical, but more like on a wider umbrella side of Kubernetes and these communities. And if you're like a kinesthetic learner who learns by doing, getting involved in those contributions, there's a Kubernetes release team shadow program. It's like this mentorship program where you get to shadow these leads and learn from them how do they do it and what do they do to contribute to Kubernetes. So there are like multiple ways. My recommendation is again that entry point, make sure you're raising the bar after trying out and you're comfortable with one entry point. So if you're trying with meetings and you got into meetings, you got in the flow, now you feel it's easy for you, or it's like so much so as you understand what's gonna happen. See if you can take it up a notch and get involved in conversations now. And once you have done that, see if you can take up some issues or some open issues or create some issues and start contributing. So it's important you slowly push those barrier of entry. Otherwise, you will always feel like a beginner and you will feel that imposter syndrome that, hey, it's not working for me. But sometimes also be aware that it not everything will work out. So maybe you don't maybe CNCF, so a couple of CNCF technologies don't work for you. So you also need to stop when you feel like your growth is not working here and this is not something you don't want to do. So it's a fine line which comes with a bit of testing out. So hit and trial of whether you want to do it, and then you can progressively push yourself to contribute, or otherwise you can try another technology.
Thanks, Ashwin. That was really insightful. So we are running a bit out of time, but I will just ask one last question. Oh, Pratyush, you want to ask? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question from the beginner's point of view. Like, suppose a person who is actually joining any community, any cloud native community, sometimes it becomes really overwhelming for, like, suppose a person joined the Slack community and there are so many groups up there, and he sometimes fear like if I say anything wrong, I'll be kicked out or something. Like, what could be their approach to engage with the community members and to learn simultaneously? Yeah, that's the question.
Uh, these are, I would say, standard open source remote work protocols. So not just for CNCF, but some standard ethics that is super duper important when you're trying to engage in any new community in general. That is not by saying starting a conversation with, hey guys, don't do that. It's not inclusive. Not everyone is a guy there. Uh, those are like small inclusive terms. Then there's like don't ask to ask or no hello, whichever you prefer. It's another concept of you don't go and ask, hey, is there any Kubernetes expert here? You are basically creating an invisible boundary bit of expertise. You don't want to do that. So standard ethics are, realizing that everyone works remotely. So you can ask a question at 2 p.m. your time and you have to wait for someone else if they're in another time zone for reply. Kubernetes community is extremely inclusive and they have a strong code of conduct. So I'm pretty sure you won't be feel excluded for not knowing. And if that happens, make sure to report that. But it's not no. So far, I have never seen that happen. I've barely seen that happen where if you don't know anything about it and if you ask the right way, uh, you won't find any repercussions. Now, when I say the right way is not by joining the Slack right now and asking how to contribute. Well, you can do that, but did you Google search before it? Did you do your research? Did you put some efforts there? So putting a little bit of effort, doing that research, and if you can't find an answer and then asking out is the right way of how you communicate in communities in general, especially for professional communities. I know for student communities, it can be a bit more chill and relaxed environment where you can just drop a meme and start like be more friendly because it's a closed environment. But here you're dealing with everyone from across the world and everyone is different. So you have to be a bit more careful when you're talking about sensitive conversations or anything like that. I On that note, I actually gave a long time ago a talk on, let me see if I can grab uh, that link on professional ethics of how do you start a conversation, how do you reach out in communities. So all the stuff that I mentioned, those tricks and stuff, uh, I gave a talk and let me see. I'll drop it in the Twitter thread here.
Yeah, Ashwin, feel free to drop it in the comment and I will pin it. So we are running out of time, so I won't take any more audience questions. But as a wrap up, I wanted to ask that if you look at the big picture, how do you believe the combined efforts of SIGs, hackathons, and open source going to influence the overall cloud native ecosystem, according to you?
I think SIG is here to stay. It's gonna go there. It's a self-sustainable community. 5 years from the line, you will see the same. It's gonna be there, maybe improved. Uh, what I would love to see is people like the churn rate should be improved. Like typically, I don't know, I don't have exact numbers, but it can be 10% or less people who join these meetings actually stay or end up contributing or learn from it. So it would be awesome to increase that number, that more people are joining and getting and learning out of it or getting involved. So in order to do that, what I would recommend is after this Twitter space, you go and share what you have learned so far. Um, that stepping stone of you want to share what you have learned, that encourages you to like try out new stuff. So if you share what you learned today, oops, I'm back. I'm back. Uh, Classic Twitter space, there's no Twitter space without a bug. I would be disappointed if there was no bug today. So, um, go ahead and talk about what you have learned today or from your first SIG networking meeting. Because when you share about it, when you go tweet or write a blog like learnings from my first SIG meeting, you are encouraging those who have never attended a meeting and they wanted that push or they wanted to know that they're not alone. So when you go and open your blog and they feel like, oh, this really helped me, and they kind of like thank you back, and that's what started. It starts this cycle of you stepping up that entry point of learning into new technologies. So you know how to get started, but see if you can put that effort to stay consistent and level up as you are getting started and learning all the C and everything about cloud native.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. Yeah, this space was really great. I certainly learned a lot myself, and I'm sure that audience had great takeaways in this space as well. And I would love if they could share a thread or blogs about all your learnings. And yeah, any final thoughts, Ashwin? Like, how did you like the space or anything? It was great.
It was
Um,
amazing. It was pretty cool. It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, uh, you will find spaces like this happening every day. You joined one. Do you want to join another one, which is around the same concept, or get started? Just like don't think too much. Go. Uh, One space is enough. Now you are no longer uh, a beginner in like you can't go now home and say you don't know anything about cloud native. You know something now. All right. So now use that as an excuse to join the meetings and get started with cloud native that you have been waiting for a long time. So yeah, just go out there. I would be very happy to see you all getting involved with cloud native and see what kind of project you fit in. It doesn't have to be Kubernetes. It can be any of them, whichever fits for you, or you can start your own project. That's also pretty cool. but go and see if you can educate yourself and others around you in this journey. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and yeah, happy hacking, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashwin. Feel free to check out his GitHub profile. It's really great. So, yeah, um, thanks everyone for joining, and see you in the next one. Bye, Ashwin. Thanks for
Bye,
coming.
everyone.